Hey guys, Rabbitry here, back with another Starcraft Broodwar Remastered cast, and today we have a ladder game from Bonyth. It is a PvT on Polypoid, so spawning in the top left is probably the best foreign Protoss player in the world, Bonyth, who is from Poland. Very kind, approachable guy who has been sending me the odd replay from his ladder stream, so thanks again Bonyth for sharing this game with me. And he is playing against a bar-coded Terran on the ladder. This is an S-rank game that was played in the month of October 2022. Okay, so looking forward to a PvT on Polypoid. Bonyth is a creative player in the sense that he's quite famous for a lot of builds, so it'll be interesting to see if he goes with an Arbiter style, a Carrier style, or perhaps that more modern meta of the High Templar or Templar drop style. There's certainly been a various number of approaches used in this matchup. Particularly in recent times, we have seen the meta change a little bit. Certainly the Korean players tend to dictate what people try and what people do. So we've certainly seen a little bit more variety in this matchup than perhaps what we were seeing a couple of years ago. Alright, so our Terran is building his barracks a little bit forward, which implies possibly a wall or setting up for a little bit of pressure. You tend to see, if Terran is looking at a 2-fac or a 1-fac push or anything early in terms of aggression, the barracks does seem to be quite close to the low ground. It'll be interesting to see where the second depot goes. If the second depot kind of goes here, then we have good reasons to believe that Terran is probably looking to do something relatively aggressive. So far, we don't know yet. So, Bonyth has sent his scout to the close position. He's not going to find his opponent there. And our Terran player has also sent his scout to the close position, and he's not going to find his opponent there. Although the probes may well end up next to each other. Alright, so where is our second depot going to go? There it is. Okay, so it's not a depot that's going onto the low ground. It's first the factory. Second depot is coming then after the factory, I presume. I don't actually know. We need it very soon because he's about to hit. I think he's building it here behind the minimap. I could hazard a guess because it's on the production tab and I can't see it. Anyway. Not a big deal. It's a factory and a barracks pretty close to the low ground. It implies, at the very least, a little bit of early pressure. Meanwhile, Bonyth has just opened a standard 1-gate range. Probably now going to look to build his Nexus on either 21 or 23. Based on the fact that he hasn't started a new Dragoon, I think it is going to be a 21 Nexus. Okay, so there it is. Probe assist here, kind of keeping an eye going, where is your expansion? Okay, Bonyth doesn't know this, but we know that the expansion is being built on the high ground and it'll be floated down. The scouting probe has just been killed, and Bonyth is going to send his Dragoon down to try and at least poke up onto this ramp to see if he can maybe see another factory, if he can see a tank, if he can see a spinning machine shop. If you can get any kind of scouting information to give him some insights as to what this Terran player is currently doing. There's no bunker on the low ground, which is usually a little bit of a diversion when they're trying to trick the Protoss into thinking it's an expansion, which is why often we see the Dragoon run past the bunker just to confirm that the command center is here. But what Bonyth is most interested in now is understanding what is happening here. So it's an early siege from Terran. So he's just going tank, no vulture. Starting siege mode first, which would usually be an indication of quite a defensive start, but I don't think that's going to be his intentions here. I think his intentions are going to be when he pops his second tank out. He's not building any marines with this, so he's probably going to float this barracks here and then form some sort of wall when he tries to land his command center. Let's see. Alright, so as expected, here comes the barracks. It's on its way up. I think the Dragoon will back away the minute the tank goes down or the second tank pops out. An eBay coming behind this to block. I think that's it's not an offensive eBay, so it's obviously in the event of Dark Templars, they have the detection available. Okay, so the barracks is on the low ground, the tank is in siege mode. Bonyth wisely backs away from his Dragoons because he's not going to be able to do much damage here. There's no bunker to even hit, so he'd have to come in range of the siege tank, and that's not going to happen. So this is actually a pretty interesting open. It gives the Terran an opportunity to skip the bunker and to skip spending money repairing the bunker. The trade-off though is you've got no vultures, which means that Bonyth has got the freedom to take a very, very fast third because there are no mobile units on the map that can give any threat to him at all. So we're literally just building our first vulture now, and we're researching speed before mines, so mines are not going to be a factor for quite some time. This is a 1-fac armory build with the eBay coming out, probably now just to form a part of this wall, or maybe for scouting of any potential Reaver drops, which at S rank level are fairly common. 2-gate Robo with a 3rd Nexus coming up, a very, very steady build from Bonyth. Both players keeping up nicely with their pro production or worker production. Protoss is slightly ahead because they've had a 2nd Nexus for slightly longer and should in theory pull ahead quite comfortably once the 3rd is up and running. Okay, so he's leaving his goons here out of range just to scout when the first vultures start to move out. I think that the Terran is going to try and move out some vultures pretty soon. He's going to have to reposition this barracks as well because I think his units are going to get blocked. So Bonyth's observer now flies in at 6:30, which is very good timing. That's kind of when you want it to come in. He's positioned a turret close to the command center, which would be good, I guess, for anti-shuttle, but Bonyth is seeing absolutely everything he wants to see here, which is how many factories do you have? And I think he will, if he hasn't already, fly his observer in to try and see if there's a starport to get an idea of any upgrades or any potential threats of drops. So good positioning of this Dragoon, good walling here, so these vultures can't get up this side, so very little potential for vulture harassment. I think the Terran would have easily deduced that it's a 3-basing Protoss, and he's still sticking just to the 2 factories, one with machine shop, one without, so he can only produce 1 tank at a time, and out of the other factory he's just going to produce vultures. There's another turret, and Bonyth's able to save his observer, just a couple of hit points left, so that was nicely done, good reflexes. No academy yet, but the starport's on his way. There I see the academy now, so he's going to be able to get some scanners. This was the purpose of the observer scout down, to confirm that the starport is coming up. This shows a very upgrade-centric style of the Terran, and also would indicate that the Terran would be looking to take a 3rd base instead of potentially going up to 5 factories and gearing up for an early push. So that was very, very useful intel that Bonyth was able to obtain with the single observer, despite the turrets that are sort of sprinkled around the place. Okay, so we have a nice observer placement in specific parts of the map. He's got 3 observers on the map already, or 4 if I count this one. So 1, 2, 3, 4. I'm actually taking notes here because I think building 4 observers in the early game is not something that you're told to do, but it's very beneficial here because he's got really good vision. And these vultures are getting nowhere. I think Bonyth is potentially setting himself up to take a 4th here. Still on 3-gate production, basically 3-gate robo. I see a spinning cybernetics core, which is telling me air weapons. He's currently building Corsairs. There's a fleet beacon, there's a 2nd Stargate. Okay, so this is going to be Carrier, Corsair, Disruption Web. Alright, so I'm rubbing my hands together with excitement because this is not something you see every day. So buckle your seatbelts, ladies and gentlemen. We are in for a wild ride. So my question is, can you do something quite goofy like this, which is a Carrier, Corsair, Disruption Web type build off of 3 bases and 3 gateways only? So it's basically Dragoons, Corsairs and Carriers. But do you need the economy of the 4th base? Here we're adding another gateway. So we're going to go up to 4-gate, 2-Stargate production. And we have 65 probes saturating 3 bases. It feels to me like you would need the 4th base, which is what's coming up now, for that saturation to be optimal. So it's going to be a 4-basing Carrier ground disruption web hybrid type style. I've never seen this done before. I've never tried something like this before. So I'm quite excited to see how it pans out. Alright, so the command center coming up. I think once the command center is up and established, we see a little bit of a factory explosion. These stargates are not too hard to scan, and neither is the fleet beacon, so I'm pretty sure that Terran is aware that it's going to be carriers. The important thing as a Terran player is to time when you build your Goliath. There is such a thing as building your Goliaths too soon. There's also certainly a timing window where you can go and kill the Protoss in between when they have enough carriers and the ground units that he would have on the field now. So this looks like now that the 4th base is up, we're stopping at 65 probes and we're going on to 6 gates, and we're sticking to the 2 stargates. So it's basically 8 production buildings. We're going to exclude the robo because no offensive units like Reavers etc. are coming out of there. So it's basically 6 gates, 2 stargates, a carrier, ground hybrid type style on 4 saturated bases. I can see here he's just saturated this 4th mineral only quite nicely. So he's got a really nice spread of workers, a pretty good income distribution, so he should be able to scale up and hit max pretty quickly. This looks like another 2 gateways coming up, so it feels like a timing now, whereas initially I thought it might have just been trying to build up a critical mass and hold any pressure that Terran would put on. Terran hasn't, despite countless scans that I've been hearing, looked too inclined to want to move out. Bonyth keeping active with his Dragoons, clearing the minefields all the time with the Observer. The Observer seems to have the speed upgrade. So it looks like Terran is perhaps expecting a little bit of a timing here, because now we're up to 10 gates. So Bonyth's replenishment power is going to be really, really strong from when he loses the ground units that go into the first attack from a trade to rebuilding them. So we've got 10 gate power, 2 stargate power. So a pretty strong hybrid mix, but perhaps more ground orientated than some other versions of this carrier hybrid strategy that I've seen before. I've seen 3-base carrier. You don't see the Corsairs mixed into that build very often. You just kind of see a carrier ground hybrid style, which tends to kind of be 6 gates or maximum 8 gates. And then you've got the 2 stargates or sometimes the 3 stargates working. But Bonyth seems pretty comfortable just with the 2. And then having a little bit more of a ground-based strategy. I'm just trying to see how many forges he has spinning. So just the 1 forge, so not going with double upgrades on the ground. Also not doing another upgrade on air, perhaps going for +2 weapons, which I would maybe expect him to do once he hits max and is replenishing and starts to save up some money. But for now we need to just see where he's going to approach the attack from. It looks like Terran has a sense that it's time to go before the carriers are too much, and Terran's pretty close to maxed out anyway, so this is time for the fight, and this looks like a really big one. So here we come, we've got this huge engagement here, disruption web over these siege tanks, and it kind of works like a stasis, so these siege tanks cannot fire. I had absolutely no idea that it works like this. So here you've got disruption web siege tanks. The siege tanks can move out of the disruption web though, which is the only kind of counter that you have available. This trade is going really well for Protoss though. He's making some good grounds into this, although this tank line is quite deep. And I think Bonyth, sensing that he's probably going to throw too many units here, pulls back. I wonder now if Terran are just going to hold their ground or potentially come after Protoss. Okay, so as mentioned, he has the replenishment power. It looks like 3 carriers here. So behind this, he's added another Stargate there, because I didn't see that one. So he is going now a 3-10 style of air and ground. And his replenishment power, like I've mentioned before, is really quite strong. Terran is still on the 3 bases. They've just set up this 4th, which I don't think Protoss has scouted. If they can get this up and saturated, that is going to be a big advantage. He's taking another base here, so he's going up to 5 bases. I don't know if that's the right move. I feel like expanding after taking so many casualties, rather than prioritizing replenishing your units or getting double upgrades going. You've got 1 armory spinning here. I can't see if there's another one. It doesn't look like there's multiple upgrades going at the moment, so I don't think this second armory is not spinning. I think that's a bad trade-off, double expanding versus not double upgrading. I think 3-3 or 3-2 mech units would be really critical in this next fight, which I'm sure Bonyth is gearing up to take relatively soon. So the Terran army is posturing around. They are in the middle of the map, which quite honestly is probably where Bonyth wants to fight, as opposed to taking the fight in any entrenched position. So here we go again. Carriers galore, disruption webs coming down, getting all of the siege tanks, which are giving these dragoons so much opportunity to get close. The zealots are getting in here as well. This fight is going really well for Protoss. This is not a deep line of tanks at all, but again, a little bit of patience, holding some of the dragoons back, throwing the zealots in as sacrificial lambs, and using what is now 6 carriers to just pick off Goliaths, abuse the terrain here, which is really skillful carrier micro. I think Terran's going to pull back, a little bit discouraged by how their trade went. The problem is Terran has spent time expanding, which is not necessarily that bad, but they haven't grown beyond 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9 factories. And I don't know if he's going to be able to take this with 2-1 units. I think his upgrades need to be stronger to be able to take down these carriers. What are the ground? We've only got +1 ground though on the Protoss units, so maybe upgrades aren't as big a factor as what I'm expecting they may be. Another base up here. So this Terran seems to just think he can macro his way to victory here. My concern being that he really needs to perhaps change his posture to being more defensive, rather holding Protoss off. Bonyth has taken a 5th behind this, but until now has just been a 4-basing Protoss against what is essentially going to become a 6-basing Terran. That does sound like Protoss is doomed, but on the plus side, I think it's given Bonyth a timing window here that he can take advantage of. Okay, so we just have our 8, I think we're on 8, possibly 10 carriers now. Let's have a look at the number. Yeah, it looks like we're on 8 carriers, and it's basically a carrier goon composition. There we go, so we've just added some zealots, and Bonyth, knowing that Terran's army is out of position here in the middle of the map, is basically just going to move on the natural and go in here and possibly go after the production. This is forcing the Terran army to rotate backwards. It's a slow, cumbersome looking mechanical army that's got to come back and take this fight from an angle that they wouldn't really like to, because they've managed to obtain high ground here with these dragoons. And Bonyth is just going in, taking down a factory, taking down the units as they're coming out of the factories here, all 9 of them. And I think this is going to be a critical position. The downside or the risk here for Bonyth, if he doesn't have enough, his units are sort of trapped. At least the ones on the ground are. The carriers could get away because they can just fly over this water. But I don't think it's going to matter. 184 to 147. The carrier micro is pretty strong. Bonyth is re-macroing behind this. Well, not currently. But he should really be building another 10 or 11 ground units, and he's got the money for another few carriers as well, but he's not losing that many units, so focusing his attention on his micro, although he did power up his macro at least 1 round, and he's sacrificed the ground units that were there and has pulled away with the carriers, I think, to now potentially cycle around to pursue or pressure another position, or just go back once he's reinforced. So a pretty frenetic PvT this one. I've actually very much enjoyed it. These bases that Terran have established here are standing totally uncontested. I don't think Bonyth knows that they're there. I think this observer is now just going to go, oh, you have a base here? Well, that's interesting. And I think now suddenly the carriers are heading towards these newly discovered bases. Here's moving down his observer here. So now Terran knows, or will know very soon, that Bonyth is going to start to take out these bases, and we can see he's positioning his army to try and defend the first base that Bonyth would pursue. So he knows exactly where the carriers are because they've just wiped out the vultures that were pressuring Bonyth's 5th. And so he's positioning here to take the fight. This is really not a good position for Terran. This is quite a narrow space, and the ground units and the carriers are going to hit them at the same time. So he's wise to pull back here a little bit to try and take the fight in a better position. I don't really think it's going to matter though. 193 versus 129. He's managed to take out, and I don't think he ever had enough SCVs to saturate all the bases that he did build. So takes that command center out in a flash. This is a full control group of carriers, and that is just Protoss power that is very, very hard for the Terran to deal with. So he's moved down here to try and protect these 2 bases. I think, unfortunately, like I said before, he had good base counts, but he did not have enough workers, and so has just struggled to produce units. You can look at the income of this Terran. He's just really struggling, whereas Bonyth, by comparison, is in inverted commas rich, and therefore able to reproduce his units at a much faster rate than his Terran opponent can. I think this might be the final fight. I think this is a lot of tanks, and the disruption web coming in again. These Corsairs have stayed alive all game, been a little bit of a nuisance, and quite handy for scouting too. They're bloody fast. So I think this is probably going to be the killing blow. Bonyth moving forward as these Goliaths all retreat. It's pretty much all Goliaths now. The Goliaths are going to be preoccupied firing on the interceptors, which will give the Dragoons an opportunity to get some free shots off here. And I think that's going to be the end of this one. GG, a masterful clinic on how to play with carriers, a beautiful 4-base build, a solid game from Bonyth. Thanks again for sending me the replay, mate. I'm Rapid Drew. I cast Variety Brood War on a regular basis. If you enjoyed this game, then please do consider subscribing. Until next time, ciao for now.